So, when I first moved to Montreal from Sydney, Australia in 2001, um, you might not know this about me, but I took over as head of a 200-person pharmaceutical manufacturing operation. One of my first tasks was to develop a strategy for the next 5 years that would focus everybody on the right behaviors and projects that would be necessary for the manufacturing unit to sort of bring sustainable success over the medium long term. I wanted this strategy to be like something really simple that would work in one simple single image that would stick in everybody's mind and be sort of easy to engage with. So even if you weren't a strategic planning type person, if you're just working in the warehouse or something, you would still know what it was all about. And we came up with what we called our Formula One strategy. Because we're in Montreal, we called it Formule 1, because that's the French version for Formula One. But because Montreal always has the Formula One Grand Prix every year, we thought that would be particularly memorable for people. So what I did was I described the current factory as a convertible Mercedes, a very nice car, but one that had limited utility. It was only really good for driving the streets of Canada in summer. That was because the factory was a very good factory, but it had a limited range of products and it only supplied the Canadian market. And these were two factors in particular that placed the factory at risk that I wanted to try and address. And then I did a sort of an arrow to an image of another car, and the car that I had was the Mercedes Formula One car. Extremely reliable, globally competitive, quick, not the cheapest, but the best performing, or at least at the time it was. With this simple image, we were able to make backup plans in every department and focus, and eventually that enabled us to secure some USA and international markets, really through superior quality assurance and automation systems. And then we had also a stream of development of new products, which ensured more the future production. So it worked pretty well. Today we're going to discuss how one man was able to bring a powerful business strategy to the highly competitive world of running equipment and apparel. The company is Brooks. The author is Brooks CEO Jim Weber, and his book is Running with Purpose. So hi and welcome to the Running Book Reviews podcast, where we review running books to help you decide if you'd like to read the book for yourself. We also hope that listening to us chat about running can help keep you motivated about your own running and maybe inspire you to try something new and different to push you forward. My name's Alan, and with my co-host Liz, we're going to talk about a book called Running with Purpose by Jim Weber.
So Running with Purpose is Jim Weber's story of how he developed his leadership qualities and was able to elevate Brooks to the powerhouse running brand it is today. As a child, Jim loved hockey and hoped to play professionally one day, which never happened despite his dedication to the sport. Luckily, he discovered running and became just as passionate about helping runners through the development of quality technical running gear. The book is divided into two parts. Part one is about Jim's beginnings and how he discovered that he wanted to run a company, but not necessarily own one. He worked in different industries, including banking, the food industry, and consumer products, and talks about how these experiences have helped shape him as a leader. At Brooks, he helped narrow down the target customers so that they could focus product development instead of trying to be everything to everyone. Part two talks about Jim's time with Brooks and how the company has evolved along the way. They went from being a subsidiary of Fruit of the Loom, which was bought by Berkshire Hathaway, to being its own independent entity under Berkshire after Warren Buffett noticed Brooks' progress under Jim's leadership. Brooks' upward trajectory is not without bumps in the road, and Jim talks about how they got through challenges in the market, including the barefoot running trend and COVID-19 pandemic. A little bit about the author. Jim Weber dreamed of being either a professional hockey player or a CEO when he grew up. He wasn't tall enough for hockey, but did become CEO for the first time at the age of 30. He became CEO of Brooks in 2001 and has been pushing the brand towards success for more than 20 years, finally making it a $1 billion brand in May of 2021. Jim won Entrepreneur of the Year, awarded by Ernst & Young in 2012, and was named one of the most influential motivators in the running industry by Runner's World in 2015. Jim earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Minnesota's Carlson School of Management and a master's of business administration with high distinction from Tufts School of Business at Dartmouth College. On a personal level, Jim is a husband, father of 3 boys, and a cancer survivor. So unfortunately, we couldn't actually get Jim to speak with us about his book. So you guys are going to get to listen to me and Alan instead.
Oh dear, how sad.
So I think maybe the first thing we should address is Running with Purpose a business book or a running book? You know, it sounds like a running book because it's about Brooks. Brooks is a running brand, but I saw that 2/3 of it talks about like Jim and how he elevated the company and his sort of business strategies and things like that.
Yeah, I would say if you're not into running, then you probably view it as a business book. I don't know kind of what your final conclusions on that all is. And I suspect that's probably why we had a bit of difficulty getting Jim's attention to come on running book reviews, because he views his book not as necessarily a running book. You know, he doesn't think he's Scott Jurek. He doesn't think he's, you know, some credible running person. He thinks he's a very credible business manager. He just happens to be in the running arena, the arena of running. But, you know, he's managed businesses in all sorts of places. Just the one that he's most passionate about and most devoted to is running. But I think he probably views the book as something of a business book. But I found it quite fascinating, I guess, because you heard in the intro that, you know, I was before I retired, I was a business executive and sort of worked in high-ish level management, where I'd be looking at, you know, strategies for factories and business sectors, not whole companies, but business sectors of big companies, operations sectors. So I find it sort of like doubly fascinating because it's about running and it's about businesses, which is kind of part of my background anyway.
Yeah, I guess we should say that he is a runner. I mean, he does run. And he does talk about that in the book, but he talks a lot about these 6 leadership principles that he kind of develops throughout his career. I think the beginning of the book, he started out with, you know, like 3 or 4 of them, and then he just like added on as he went, and he got more experience.
Yeah, I think I saw his marathon. The first marathon he did was the Twin Cities Marathon in, is it Minnesota? Minneapolis and St. Paul, probably, as the other Twin Cities. He did that in 1982, and he finished in 3 hours 31.
Which is a pretty decent starting time for a marathon. I mean, he just, first marathon, and there he goes running 3:32. I kind of saw that. So I'm gonna list his 6 leadership principles, which he gets to towards the end of the book. But he's their own a niche, build a moat, solve for profitability, vision without execution is hallucination, lead authentically, and the ultimate advantage is a strong culture. And what's interesting is that those are kind of chronological. Like I think like the first 3 he sort of had off the bat, and then he kind of added on. And so the last one he added was the ultimate advantage is a strong culture. And it's kind of interesting that like the culture of the company was sort of like the last thing he added. But I think probably that gives like the biggest benefit is having a strong company culture, you know, because I think employees, because I'm not a manager, I'm sort of, you know, one of those bottom of the barrel type employees, you know, the one at the like nobody else is under me.
One of those absolutely essential executor purposes. Vision without execution is hallucination is his 4th one. So he needs people to execute.
That's true.
So he needs people just like you who execute in a flawless fashion, Liz.
Yes.
And do that in a way that's very, very conscientious.
And I have to say that as one of those execution type employees, like for me, the most important thing is the company culture, because that's what I will stay with the company for, is like the people I work with, you know? So it's funny that like on the upper level, it was like sort of the last thing to be added.
Yeah, I think the reason that is it dawns on the people at a senior level when they start thinking about long term. Yeah, one of the
Okay.
things I noticed in my career was there are a lot of people at a very senior level who move around quite a bit. Jim has not necessarily done that. I think I mean, he's been with Brooks for what 20 plus years now
Hmm.
in senior leadership position. So he's been kind of devoted to the success of that company. And one of the things, once you've been there for a while, is you start to not necessarily just look to make some sort of quick fix and get some numbers and then move on to your next promotion, but look at what's going to make this company go on forever. I mean, one of the things I used to talk about was perennial employment. So I used to say to the guys in the factory, you know, I want your children to come to work here and to have high quality jobs, high paid jobs. You know, we want to be here for the forever. I want your
Mm.
grandchildren to come and work here. And they used to be quite turned on by that. Like, you know, we're not just here to do something in the short term to profit the company. But the fact is, if you don't do something that profits the company, you're not going to have a long term. So
Yeah.
things like solve for profitability are sort of in there early on because basically if you don't make some profits, your shareholders go, okay, we need to sell this company or we need to close down or we need to fire everybody and go somewhere else.
Yeah, which is interesting because I mean then obviously it won't be profitable. And Jim, because he's been with Brooks for 20 years, I mean it's proof that thinking long term kind of like does is profitable. Um and he sort of talks about the whole shareholder um having investors and all that because they often think more short term because they want to make some money in the next year or two or month or two. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, what I used to say to people was, look, if you're a senior person or an investor or an investment company putting money into another company, you're looking at that versus, well, if I put it somewhere else, like if I put it in the bank, I'd get a sure return. Not very much, maybe at the moment, but I'd get a sure return of a certain percentage. So if I'm going to risk it and put it into a company, I want more than that. So I want to get paid for my risk. So you've got that problem to solve, and that's his third sort of statement, or what would you call
Mhm.
them? What would you call his list? His third principle:
Yeah, I
solve for
think.
profitability. I mean, you've got to do that. If you don't do that, you're letting down one of your key stakeholders, who is the people who are investing in your company,
Hmm.
either maybe even a shareholder, an owner, or someone like that.
Yeah. I guess we should talk about Jim's childhood a little bit. Like he did play a lot of hockey, but do we know much more about that?
Yeah, he sounded like he was actually passionate to be a hockey player, and he said about being a hockey player, and he was brilliant as a kid, and it sounded like he was pretty well developed as a kid, so he was able to use his physical attributes being superior when he was younger to push ahead in hockey, and that kind of eventually sort of caught up with him. Maybe he stopped growing, or other people were growing and catching up with him.
Yeah, I think like kids kind of they don't always grow at the same speed. So you'll have some kids that'll be like the biggest kid in the class in grade school, and you go to high school, and now they're the smallest kid in the class. So it seemed like that's sort of what happened to Jim and hockey.
He talks about having one of these "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Sessions in class when he was at school, and he said, I think they asked them to produce 5 things that they wanted to be, but one of the things was I want to be a professional hockey player,
Hmm.
and one thing was I want to be a business manager or a business owner,
No, he specifically didn't want to own the business. He wanted to
to
be
be a
like a,
manager, a leader.
yeah, like a leader. Hmm.
So he always had that in his system, I think. I think as a kid he was a bit of an introvert. I think he describes himself.
Yeah, he describes himself as an introvert. But that wishes he was an extrovert. He actually says that at one point in the book.
Yeah, I think, we see charismatic business leaders, so we think all business leaders have to be extroverts. The ones you see are the ones who are always in front of the TV.
Hmm. They give like really great
Yeah,
speeches.
like Richard Branson or somebody like that. They're jumping out of airplanes and getting in front of the troops and going rah, rah, rah.
Hmm.
So maybe he thought that that's why he should be an extrovert. You certainly have to do presentations to large numbers of people in sort of public ways. So you have to do extroverty type things. So maybe that's why he wanted to be more extrovert. It seemed as a kid as well, his mum was super positive influence in his life and his dad not so much, which
Mm-hmm.
is kind of strange because you think if he's going to be like a hockey player, like his dad would be the major influence. But
Yeah.
I think he described his mum as sort of a glass half full and his dad as sort of a glass half empty sort of guy. His dad
Yeah.
seemed to have an alcohol problem and sort of died at an early age as well.
Mm-hmm. And Jim loved hockey so much that when he went, I think it was when he was going to high school, he really wanted, like his siblings all went to public school because his parents couldn't pay for private school. And he really wanted to go to this particular school that had a really good hockey team, but it was a private school. So what he ended up doing was he actually took a job to pay the tuition, which like that takes dedication on top of practicing hockey and playing hockey.
I think what you see at an early age, you see the incredible focus and drive to go for the thing that he's decided that he wants to do or that he wants to be. And, those are traits that subsequently, when he gets into business, are obviously going to work well for him. If he has a clear plan and he has a clear goal, then he pushes towards it and mobilizes all his forces to go towards it, I think. So you
Mm-hmm.
see the childhood thing sort of, oh yeah, you can see why that would translate into somebody being a good business person.
Yeah, he does that kind of thing again when he goes to get his MBA because he and his wife, I think his wife was pregnant or they just had their first child, and he decided he was going to do his MBA, and they really didn't have a lot of money, and obviously the MBA cost money, but his wife was very supportive of the decision, so like they made it happen, but it sounded like it wasn't really easy, and that like probably at the time, I don't know, he sounded like he felt a little guilty about it because it wasn't just him making these decisions for himself, it was like he was also kind of, I'm going to say, dragging his family through it. He wasn't really, because it
Yeah,
was, his wife was supporting.
if he's going to make his way in the world of business, he would probably need an MBA, a Masters of
Mm-hmm.
Business. And so he realized that. And like most people at that level, I think what you see is there are family sacrifices. And sometimes, I wouldn't say often, but regularly you see that families get destroyed as well because the person at the top is driving so hard to go where they want to go because they're not going to get there unless they're driving very, very hard. In this case, I think the family was supportive and he was appreciative of that. And but there's always a sacrifice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but yeah, so they
So
got through that.
he went to
Mm-hmm.
Tuck College, I think, which is quite near us, relatively near us. I think it's in New Hampshire, I think somewhere.
Yeah, apparently at the time when he went, it was the first MBA that like used computers. That's what he mentioned in the book.
Yeah,
Yeah, he didn't go into a lot of detail about that. But
yeah,
yeah,
back in the 80s.
so it was
Yeah,
very, it was very ahead of its time. So he got, I guess, some analytic skills and things like that from using computers.
yeah, no online distance learning in those days.
No way.
Yeah, so he did his MBA and afterwards he went out into industry to, I think initially he went to Pillsbury to be in some marketing roles and worked his way around in terms of getting experience with brands. At this stage, a food company and nothing to do with
Nothing to do with
sports.
running. No. And before that, he worked in the banking sector, and that's kind of, I think it was after that that he had decided he wanted to do his MBA. He worked at a bank. I think he was like the loans officer type of thing, like he was giving small business loans.
Yeah, and he was seeing sort of businesses from an investor's point of view and
Hmm. And he wanted to be on the other side. He
yeah.
wanted to be the businesses that had these great ideas that they wanted to implement, so they were asking for money. And yeah, then that's how he decided, I guess, to go do his MBA. Then he worked at Pillsbury, which that's interesting. That's completely different from banking and from apparel.
Yeah, but I think what he was doing there is he was learning business management in practical terms, and it was a big enough company that he could move around a little bit and get different experiences.
Hmm. So before going to Brooks, he turned around two businesses. So he worked for Coleman, camping products is what like I know it for.
Yeah,
But apparently that company really wasn't doing well, and he was able to turn it around. They were like sort of they had gotten, I guess they sort of gotten to this point where they were like seen as the cheap alternative when you couldn't get the good stuff, and he sort of managed to turn that around and make the company products like better quality and stuff like that. And he did the same for a company called O'Brien, which I had never heard of.
no, apparently they're a water sports company. So at least now we see getting into outdoors and into sports.
Mm-hmm.
I guess honing his business approach in terms of working out what companies need and trying to give it to them and lead companies to improved performance, I guess, in terms of profitability, etc.
Yeah, there was something interesting he said in the book, and I had written it down. The goal for a brand is not to emulate the competition, but to find unaddressed opportunity in between the strengths that your competitors already own. So that was interesting. He said because that's kind of the strategy he was using with all the companies.
Yeah, so that's really identifying your niche a little bit, saying,
Mhm.
okay, where are there little unmined pieces? You could say, oh well, Nike are doing well. He'll come onto that when he gets to Brooks, but you could say Nike are doing this type of shoe. We need to do that type of shoe as well. Or you could do, well, because Nike are doing that type of shoe and they're focused on that, they've missed this little piece of the market. So you find a niche and you try to work in that and build some value in there. So
Yeah.
you don't just follow.
Mhm.
You see what other people are doing and do not quite the thing that they're doing, but something that fills a gap.
I was kind of wondering because, Nike came out with those plated shoes, and then all the companies came out with their own version of the plated shoe. And apparently, Brooks has had research, like a research department on footwear, and they, see how runners run ever since the barefoot running movement, which is like way back after Chris McDougall released his
Yeah.
book in 2009. So they started like a kind of like an R&D, and they still do it, but they haven't really seemed to push their plated shoe. Like they have one, but they,
Mm.
while other companies have made like a second and third version already, you don't see many
Hasn't been that successful, has it?
yeah, like they've got the Hyperion Tempo Elite, but I don't know, like I haven't seen, I watch those YouTube channels with like Seth Damore, and so I watch some of the gear reviews, and I don't see that there is a new version of that shoe. So I kind of wonder if
It's a
there
pity
are
we
they
haven't got Jim here. We could ask him about it.
it's too bad, yeah, because either they're really cooking up something really great that's just, not ready yet for the market, or maybe that they decided not to jump on that bandwagon.
I guess we'll never really know, will
We'll
we?
never know.
Unless we say, Jim, if you're listening to this podcast at some stage in the future and you hear us talking about Brooks and their innovation and their plated shoe, how come you haven't developed a plated shoe kind of as good as Nike? Or I guess you would say he's probably looking for the niche, or he's not simply going to copy where somebody else has gone, and he's trying to zig when other people are zagging, which he talks
Yeah.
about as well.
Yeah.
There's no point in trying to copy Nike because Nike already own that piece of the market.
Maybe instead of like Pebax foam, like maybe Brooks is developing some kind of like crazy, even higher efficiency foam, and we just don't know about it yet.
It's possible. Certainly, I think they're focusing on what they do well, rather than on focusing on what somebody else is doing well. What we saw for the minimalist shoe revolution. They didn't
Hmm.
just jump on the bandwagon and say, okay, we have to do that, we have to do that. I think one of the things that Jim tells us about his attitude towards Brooks and the strategy and leadership of Brooks is that's not what they do.
Hmm.
What they try to do is they try to build their own niche or their own uniqueness somewhere.
Yeah.
To begin with, that was like the Brooks Adrenaline with the stability shoe, and they had their own niche, and it was theirs, and they kind of owned it a little bit, and they
Hmm.
weren't just going to follow some trend. And
Yeah.
maybe they would view plate shoes as a trend. Yeah, we have one, but we're not investing our company into it.
Yeah, but then the like the minimalist trend, they I mean they didn't jump on it right away, but they did come out with something. They had the Pure series where they had like the Pure Cadence and the
Yeah.
Pure Flow, and there was one of those Pure series shoes, like I really liked it. I had like three pairs along the way, and they stopped making them. They don't have that series at all anymore, but they were pretty good. Like they felt very kind of light and bouncy. So I don't know, but they didn't they weren't the first ones to have the minimalist shoes. Like all the other companies had come out with something that had barely any foam underneath, and Brooks was a little bit different. Like it had a bit more foam, but it still had like the light flexible component, which I guess people liked and were looking for, and like they did a really good job. So I don't know, maybe they're just cooking something up and it's not ready yet. You look
Maybe,
skeptical.
maybe. I think everybody has their innovations, so everybody's trying to innovate, and it's a question of where they're trying to do that. And but I think everybody's having trouble competing with Nike at the top end plated shoe marketplace. So
Yeah.
I don't know that Brooks are going to do that. They may be going to come out with something else, as you say. Okay, so we got well sidetracked there in discussion, but with our story about Jim, he hasn't even arrived at Brooks yet. So when he when he came to Brooks, Brooks were kind of, well, would you say they were in trouble? They weren't doing great, were they?
No.
And he was like the fourth president that they'd had in 2 years. So they
Yeah,
were sort
that's
of
not a good.
rotating door of presidents to try and salvage this company who didn't really have anything unique to offer necessarily, or not much.
Yeah, they were in all the they were kind of trying to do everything. So at the time, like they had, kids shoes and athleisure, and so they had like lots and lots and lots of different products.
Yeah, and they were sort of targeting lots of volume, if they could move a lot of volume for a low margin. So they're
Hmm.
dealing with, the big volume, low cost type stores who
Yeah.
were just selling shoes to anybody who would come in and, say, oh, I need a pair of shoes for pottering around in the garden or something like that. So,
Yeah.
try these. And they would then negotiate the deals with Brooks and try and negotiate the deals for big volumes, but low margins.
Yeah. And then what he decided was he would get rid of a lot of the SKUs that were just the sort of like high volume, low cost ones, and decided instead to focus the strategy on selling to specialty running stores and creating like higher quality products for runners specifically.
Yeah, I think he describes a meeting where he went in to see, I can't remember who it was, but one of these large volume generic shoe or apparel merchandisers, retailers, and they were trying to negotiate like his price down. I think they were trying, at that time, Brooks were positioning their shoes at about a $30 price, and they were trying to get him to, oh no, you need to position it at just under $20. And he said,
That's a big
I
difference.
suddenly realized that this is just a game that's never going to work. It's scary
Mm.
because there's a lot of volume associated with it, so there's loads and loads of sales, but there's not much profitability. So we need to stop servicing these guys. We'll send our stuff if they ask for it, but we're not going to do any more work to try and win the business, and we're going to focus more on developing specialist things, cutting the number of SKUs. What's this SKU term that you've just used. I didn't know
Oh,
you knew that.
no, it's because I used to work in a store. And so like 7 years of
SKU,
my, yeah,
stock
SKU.
keeping unit.
Yeah, well, like 7 years of my life. So that's like,
Oh, really? You used
yeah.
to work in a store? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I worked at a grocery store called Maxi.
Oh, yes, I did.
Yeah. I think you knew that. You probably
Yeah.
didn't know it was 7 years, but yeah, I was seven. That was my first job, and I stayed forever.
Well, that's because you're a loyal, execution-driven employee.
I had a good team also.
Jim would have given you a job for sure. So anyway, so he decides that, okay, if we have to lose volume and our sales go down and we have to take a hit, we're going to do that, and we're going to pivot to service running and runners, and we're going to be brilliant at that.
Hmm.
One of the things that runners don't quibble too much about is the price, if this what you give them is good.
Which is kind of true. I mean,
Some runners might disagree with that, but
yeah,
everybody's putting their hand in their pocket to buy alpha flyers and those kinds of things. They're not going, oh.
that's true. Although then when you see them on sale, you're like, oh, well, I just need an extra pair of these because they're like $100 off.
Yeah, but the thing is, even on sale, they're a very expensive pair of shoes.
They are. Although I have to say, since the pandemic, there hasn't been much on sale, especially in Canada. Like I feel like we have more runners now. So like nothing gets to the sale time of the year.
Hang on, stop. We're talking about Brooks and Jim Weber. We're not talking about you going shopping for shoes.
I used to get lucky on those sale racks, but not anymore.
Hold on, there'll be a small interlude in our podcast while we talk about Liz's shoe shopping habits. Liz, what have you bought recently? I hear you bought some Brooks shoes.
I did buy some Brooks shoes, full price, by the way.
Jim would be proud of you.
He would, yes. I bought some Brooks Ghost 14s. And you know why I bought them? I bought them because your daughter Susie just got her second iteration of those same shoes. So I was like, if people keep buying them over and over, they've got to be good. It was about time I tried them.
Yeah, well, I certainly went through those as well at one stage. I'm not in Ghost now, but I did spend, I think, Ghost 8, Ghost 9, Ghost 10.
Mm-hmm.
I think I went through those. Where are they at now? 14?
14.
I think the thing is they're a wonderful sort of high-performing middle-of-the-road shoe. I don't want to say middle of the road as a negative comment.
No, I think what you mean by middle of the road is like they're not for like speed workouts. They're just more like you can kind of do a little bit of everything. But
Yeah, and a great big, if you're getting seriously into running, a great starting shoe in terms of probably be comfortable, be responsive a bit, be forgiving, probably feel better than the shoes you used to have if you're just getting into running. So a lot of things right with the shoe and applicable to a lot of situations for a lot of general people. If you're a sprinter or an elite endurance runner, you're maybe not going to spend a lot of time in them, but most people are not that.
also they're now carbon neutral as of 2021.
What the actual shoe itself?
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
like the production of the shoe is carbon neutral. I think it was written on the
Okay.
box.
Well, it must be right then if it's written on the box. And in fact, it must be right if it's written on the box because we trust in Brooks's integrity. We'll come to that later in terms of, how they go about running their business. So where were we before we went shoe shopping? Oh,
Shoe shopping's important.
what color are your Ghost 14s, by the way? This is also very important.
Yeah, they're kind of like a mint green, kind of like very light mint green.
I detect a slight tone of disappointment in your voice.
No,
You
they're
didn't
like
want the mint green ones. You wanted hot pink or go faster fluoro orange or something, did you?
well, I have plenty of those. I got the mint green because the person selling them told me that they're not a very common color, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Let me get those ones.
Person in the shop wanted to get rid of those shoes, didn't they? So coming back to Brooks and Jim,
Mhm.
a pretty brave decision because the sales numbers for the annual sales numbers are probably, with those types of decisions that he's making, the sales numbers are going to go down. It might be that the overall profit is not going to go down much, and it may in fact go up. But if you're looking at the revenue, and it's one of the key metrics for a business, looking at the turnover and the revenue,
Mm-hmm.
for sure they're going to lose a lot if they start ignoring the people who are moving the huge volumes. The Walmart version of shoe shops.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pretty gutsy decision. You've got to be pretty focused and pretty clear about what you're trying to do if you start doing that.
Yeah.
And it didn't work in the sort of immediate term, but over the next few years, I think that approach was almost fundamental for Brooks. So instead of just being a Me Too, nobody apparel provider, this started to transform into people who were known to provide for the needs of runners,
Yeah.
focused on runners, for
Mm-hmm.
runners.
And they launched, I think this was kind of at the same time, they launched a trail shoe for Scott Jurek, which actually, when he mentioned it in the book, it reminded me that when we had read Scott Jurek's book, he had a couple of Cascadia trail shoes for his FKT that he did. I remember him talking about it. It was one
Is
of
that
the
right?
things he had in his van. Yeah. But it wasn't, it didn't click when we were reading, Scott Jurek's book. But then when they mentioned that they created this Cascadia trail shoe for Scott Jurek, I was like, oh yeah, he did mention that he was wearing the Cascadia trail shoes.
Yeah, I think Cascadia is one of the names that sort of comes down that people remember. I think the Brooks Adrenaline, for people who need a robust shoe that's going to give you some stability, is something that a lot of people really appreciated. They found that it worked for them. It's fairly specifically engineered in terms of the way it kind of worked. It had some sort of robust piece in it that didn't go from sort of back to front, but went kind of turned, was slightly curved, and I think worked very well for many people who swore by it.
Yeah, it was the
personally
first.
didn't, but
I don't think I've ever tried the Adrenaline shoes, but it's apparently the first product that created brand loyalty with customers who tried it.
yeah, I think it was a cornerstone of their shoe development for a while,
Yeah.
and kept them ticking over while they were transforming from this Me Too type of company into the specialist running area. It was the thing that they used as the big hook to move some volume.
Mm-hmm.
They prided themselves as well on, which was kind of cool, on service. Particularly cool at the moment with respect to service, because it's hard to get stuff.
Yeah.
In the post-COVID era, it's sort of been hard because of supply chain difficulties. And I suspect, I don't know what you think about this, but I suspect there are some companies who make a big song and dance about shoes and then don't make them very available, just to sort of create a false, what would you call it? So like a false demand almost.
Yeah, I think that might happen with some brands. Yeah, because I found it especially frustrating with track spikes. I know that's not something that everybody shops for, but when I was trying to find a new pair of track spikes, I really had a certain pair in mind. It was like the New Balance new like super spike that had a little bit of foam and like a plate in it, and I couldn't find them anywhere. Well, at least not in Canada. And when I did find them, there were no sizes left. Like you could find them online, but none of the sizes were available. So they might as well just take it offline, but I guess they didn't. But yeah, it's tough. Whereas, yeah, Brooks really prides themselves on making their gear available and delivering it on time to the specialty running stores. That was one thing that Jim thought was really important.
Yeah, if I think their theory was, if you're going to have a reduced sales in terms of volume, don't miss a sale because you haven't got the thing available that the runner wants.
Yeah, which is good. They did have an issue at one point because they were changing from one warehouse to another warehouse. I think they were,
Yeah, and
they had built the big
new
one.
systems, and they all like got messed up, and they couldn't ship the deliveries on time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they made a mess up with their logistics switchover, which Jim kind of confesses to, and how they got it wrong and what they should have done versus what they did do.
Yeah.
But it was such a big deal because they were focused on that, so that when it didn't happen. It was such a huge deal for them.
Yeah, because that's what they pride themselves on.
Talking about problems that they had, in particular, I think when they got to 2008, they had a big downturn because two things happened. 2008, there was a sort of US economic recession.
Mhm.
So I guess what happens when there's a recession, people go, well, what could I avoid to spend money on? And
Yeah.
running shoes are probably in that category. Let's run an extra few hundred kilometers on the ones I've got.
Yep, that's how it goes.
Yeah. At the same time, there was the minimalist shoe revolution. So we discussed Chris McDougall's Born to Run book, which is sort of the launching point for this minimalist revolution. And that was, I think, came out in 2009. So they had
Mhm.
2008 recession, 2009, suddenly minimalist shoes, barefoot running. And this is don't need as much shoe, or you don't need any shoe, or you don't need shoes, or you shouldn't be running in shoes.
Yeah, shoes are bad for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
shoes just make you injured.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, it all came at once, and Brooks weren't of a mind to have a strategy of just being, oh, we'll just follow the trend, as we've said before. So they ended up with like a quite a big downturn that they then had to sort of try to get out of, and they did that with a lot of, I think, a lot of soul searching and research.
Yeah, that's where they set up their R&D to study runners and how they run, and yeah, then they came out, but much later with their sort of version of
The pure
minimalist.
things,
But
yeah,
yeah, yeah, it wasn't so minimal. It wasn't like the Five Fingers or anything, which I think by then we're getting a bad rap because
yeah.
it came out with that Pure series a little bit later, and meanwhile people had gotten injured with their Five Fingers, so I guess the runners were ready to buy shoes again that had cushion.
I think Jim wants to lead the company to be one that you can rely on, and that isn't going to just follow the trend, but is going to go somewhere that is proven or that is backed up by some rationale, rather than by this it looks neat, or that sort of stuff.
Yeah, he talks about like having data to back up decisions,
Yeah,
and yeah, I think that's where the R&D comes in. Which he says at one point that companies sometimes they like that would be one thing that they would cut because it's easy to cut, and then you can save a lot
yeah,
of money by cutting that department.
yeah.
But he believes in it, and he believes in helping the data, helping create products that are good.
He talks a lot about being an authentic leader, and in fact, he added that to his list. That was number 5 on the list that we were reading at the start.
Mm-hmm.
Lead authentically. And I like management books because they always say things like, be an authentic leader. And you go, yeah, what's that? Tell me what that is. But he talks about, well, if you want to be an authentic leader, for him, you should have 3 things. He talks about focus, know what you want, what you're trying to do. And we saw that at an early stage when he was focusing on, things at a school level, getting his MBA or whatever. So he talks about focus, have a clear direction about what you're trying to do. Curiosity. So number 2, curiosity. So seek to understand, have people who give you different opinions, try to understand why things are happening, be incessantly curious, and so be examining new things in the market. And then the key one for me, trust. Can you trust the company? If the company says on the box, these shoes are carbon neutral, actually, you can read that, and this is the dilemma I have all the time. You can read that and you can say, okay, well, they wrote it on the box, so it must be right. Or you can read it and say, oh yeah, they've just written that on the box because they think they might be able to sell me some shoes if they write that on the box. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
well, they are obviously writing it on the box because they want to sell you the shoes.
Mm-hmm.
But can you trust the company to tell you the honest truth, the right things? And this always brings me back to Nike.
Oh,
So, so
I
because
was wondering when you were going to bring up Nike in this conversation.
because as far as I'm concerned, the trust between me and Nike is broken.
Yeah.
Because of their Oregon project and their behavior around that. Not that happened, but that dialogued around it or didn't dialogue around it afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Because then I would go, well, if I can't trust the company from that point of view, because not that something would go wrong, because if you're an organization, you can't control everything that everybody does in your company,
Mm-hmm.
but you can control what you do when it occurs and how you respond to it. And if I see people who are not responding correctly, then I tend to go, well, if you write on the box that it's carbon neutral, I'm not sure I can trust that.
Yeah. And that's fair.
And and I think what we see with Brooks is they try to do the reverse. They try to build that into everything that they do in terms of their trustworthiness, that they can be relied upon.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if you trust the company when they come out and they say, using the example again, they say that the shoes are carbon neutral, you don't go, well, yeah, right. Well, based on all their other behaviors, I believe that. So, yeah, that's another tick in the box for them.
Mm-hmm.
And you keep on moving. And once they've built that, keeping that, they get more and more credit because you believe more and more things that they do and say. When Jim says, well, I want to do a running apparel that's devoted to runners, I go, okay, well, I've run in some Ghosts. They're pretty good. I like them. They seem
Mm-hmm.
pretty honest and good.
Yep.
And, oh, hey, hang on. I've got a pair of Brooks running shorts in my
You do.
drawer.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but they're the best running shorts that I own, and I always go to them first.
Yeah.
And when I look on why? Because they have pockets in the right places, they're light,
Yes.
they fit well, they have a zip where they're supposed to have a zip so I can put my valuables in there and not lose them. They even have a secret pocket tucked into the inside shorts that I didn't know was there until a few
And
weeks ago.
oh, you didn't even know that was there?
No,
Oh,
that you
yeah,
can actually
that's
get your phone into, so it keeps your phone snug against your leg.
yep. Instead of bouncing around in the pocket. Mm-hmm.
And they have a tie around the waist, a coat tie, and stitched into the coat tie, there's Run Happy,
Isn't that a great touch?
which is excellent. So you see that and you go, wow, these guys,
They
yeah,
thought of
I
everything.
believe what they say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I look at all those things and I can see all of those things, and if you say how much did you pay for the shorts, I can't remember.
Yeah.
So it obviously wasn't the top end price.
It might have been, but you were probably willing to pay it
But it was
because
probably
like
enough. It was
yeah.
probably enough to be nicely profitable for Jim and his Brooks company. But it's not the thing that I remember.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I remember is their great shorts, and where are they? Oh, they're in the wash.
oh
no,
no.
I'm gonna have to wear some other shorts.
Yeah, I guess you're gonna have to go and get another pair.
But I think trust is, for me, I don't like to labor this much because too much, but I have to because I come from a management background. I think trust for me is a big thing because as managers and as leaders of companies, the default is for you not to be trusted, because what everybody sees in the world almost is politicians cheating,
Mm-hmm.
companies cheating,
Yeah.
sports people lying. They see all of this, and so the default is when you go out there and go, okay, my shoes are carbon neutral, is for them is for them not to trust you. Is for people not to trust you. And the question I always had as a leader was, how do you get around that? And the answer is, and this is not an answer I came up with, but I read it in a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. The answer is, you develop trust with people by showing that you're trustworthy. So every day you have to do acts that are based on trust. I made a promise, I kept a promise. I said I would do this little thing for you, and I did it. I said I would come here at this time, and I showed up. I said I would invest in this amount of money in this project, and I did it.
Mm-hmm.
I said I would give you a half day off on Friday if you achieved these objectives, and you did, so there you go. And you just keep doing that. And then when you say something like, I need you to work through the weekend because we have an urgent delivery that is going to be really a difference maker in terms of our ability to win a contract, people will go, okay, he's serious, and we'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a sort of, you're starting to develop a company which is transformational. So I think in terms of his leadership, his authentic leadership, to come back to it, I think the trust thing is super key. And
Yeah.
I think that it really works a little bit with Brooks. I mean, we do trust them more than Nike.
Nike doesn't really say much. They kind of sweep. I remember the whole thing with Mary Kane in the newspaper, and they didn't. I don't think that they put out any statement. It was like they sort of just swept it under the rug, waited for it to pass, and moved on. So
they know people are going to buy their stuff because it's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't say that Nike stuff isn't good. Some of it's very, very good. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But do we trust them? Some of us don't.
I guess they don't earn that trust. I think also Jim mentions, as in the realm of trust, it was also, but this might have been at another point that he was talking about it. But I think it's also about having trusting the people that work for you, and trusting the people you work with. That's also part of it, because micromanaging is never a very efficient strategy.
Says somebody who's been micromanaged, obviously. But yeah, I mean, it's a sign that trust is not there. It might not have broken down. It might just not have been established yet, or, people are not of that style. But yeah, it's not. Because when you manage big organizations, you can't be there in front of everybody telling them what to do.
No. And sometimes it's every person's like unique twist on how to do things that, maybe that's how you discover, better ways of doing things, is because, the person puts their own unique twist, turns out, oh, well, this really works. And then, you share it with your colleague, and then they start doing the same thing. And all of a sudden, like, your whole group is like performing way better than they used to, and happens
because you're putting the input of a lot of different people who are engaged in the success.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they want to be part of the success, so they're adding their value, and you're getting out of their way.
So I thought of you during one part of the book when
the bit where the Kipchoge was running really quickly.
No.
Oh no.
No, not that part. No. The part of the book where they were at the USATF 2012 Olympic trials in Portland, Oregon. So Jim was there with, some of the Brooks, I guess some of the other Brooks CEOs. And they decided, well, we want to encourage the athletes. So they flew their Run Happy banner over the stadium, over Nike's
which is
track.
The Olympic trials were Nike sponsored, were they?
Yeah, and apparently Nike wasn't very happy, and and then so when they found out that Nike wasn't very happy, they flew it a second time, and I thought of you because I thought that might be something you would do, and then he just ended up leaving.
Nike asked them to leave, I think, didn't they?
I think so. Yeah.
I can kind of understand that. Nike have played a lot of money. They don't want to get their advertising subverted by somebody who. But that's kind of innovative and cool, because it's the airspace is free.
Mm-hmm.
You can put anything in the airspace.
Yep.
And I think Jim at the time, Jim said, well, he wasn't going to leave because he'd bought a ticket and he hadn't infringed anything. Which is true, he hadn't.
Yeah.
But also the ticket didn't require him to infringe anything. Nike were able to decide themselves if they wanted to
honor the ticket or not.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think the ticket constituted a license to attend, which could be revoked by Nike at any time, which they did. So he had to leave. That's nice to see. So we always like to see the littler guy having a go at the bigger guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a true competitive spirit. We like that. There's no doping involved with that, is there?
No, there isn't.
Yeah, so there you go. One of the things we haven't talked about was one of Jim's big financial heroes and inspirations was Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett, the big super tycoon, mega rich person in charge of Berkshire Hathaway. the company which owns loads and loads of things, one of which was Fruit of the Loom. And
And Fruit of the Loom owned Brooks
that's right.
at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Jim eventually, because of the performance of Brooks over the time, got the attention of Warren Buffett, and he eventually decided to take Brooks out because it was unique and successful, and he wanted to have focus to bring it out from under Fruit of the Loom and make it as a separate company reporting directly to him, which I think Jim was rather pleased about because he got to spend some time with presenting to Warren Buffett.
Yeah. Yeah. Apparently, Jim was on vacation and Warren Buffett left him a voicemail. And so when he got back, he was kind of like kicking himself. He's like, I can't believe I didn't check my voicemail while I was on vacation. Meanwhile, he was checking his email while he was on vacation, which I guess is one of the sacrifices that you make when you're a big executive is you don't really get real vacation. But when he called Warren back, like he got invited to lunch, and apparently this is like a very very kind of exclusive thing that is highly in demand. And
Warren Buffett's not going to invest a lot of time. His time is extremely valuable, so he's not going to invest a lot of time. He's just going to buy a company and leave you to run it and look at your numbers. The fact that he would spend, I think Jim actually says that Warren Buffett said, either Warren Buffett said or Jim found out that a 1 hour dinner, he'd auctioned a 1 hour dinner with himself for charity, and that he'd raised something like $4 million, something million dollars.
Some incredible price.
So Jim said I was having a dinner which was worth $4.5 million.
Which is incredible.
I would be scared stiff.
Yeah, me too.
Of like wasting the guy's time.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know what to say. So, how's the family? Oh, it's been raining a lot recently, hasn't it? It's my English background. You always talk about the weather. I'd be fired. But so I think he was quite inspired by Warren Buffett and some of the wise words he was able to get from Warren, and also the fact that he was able to invite Warren to Brooks to come and visit. And that was quite prestigious to have him there.
Yeah, he was pretty proud of that, which I mean, he should be. Like, that's quite the event. The other big event that happened to Brooks was when Des Linden won the Boston Marathon in 2018, which was that year that the conditions were epic, and you ran the Boston Marathon that year.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was beaten by Des Linden, but there we go. But I was actually in the same race.
Isn't that what's like so great about running, though? Because you can be fantastic. In the same race as Des Linden.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like I can get in my motor car and go and have a, bit of a drive with Lewis Hamilton and, the Formula One drivers. But I can put my shorts on and have a bit of a run with Des Linden and, whoever else, professional runners, world record holders, providing you can qualify for the races that they might be doing. Yeah, 2018 Boston Marathon is extremely memorable. Probably the next memorable one after 2013, which was the bombs.
The bombing.
Yeah. Because I've never run a marathon in so much rain for so long.
And it was cold too, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, it was cold and wet, but I mean, torrentially wet. The terms I use is I always say, well, it was raining and it eased off for a while, and it eased off so that it was only torrential.
Wow.
That was the least it got, sort of thing.
Oh, wow. That's pretty
and
crazy.
So it was quite memorable and great that Des won it because, local girl, so to speak.
I think it was the first time in, I don't know, like 30 years or something that a U.S. woman won the Boston Marathon.
Yeah.
So.
And she won it wearing Brooks shoes.
Yeah, and a Brooks jacket.
And she needed that jacket.
She definitely needed that jacket. It looked miserable.
I was wearing on the start line, I was wearing a garbage bag over the top. You like cut a hole in it and pull it over yourself.
Yep.
To try and keep a little bit dry. I ended up running the whole race in that garbage bag. I never had the benefit of Brooks apparel. Probably the garbage bag saved my race because I would have gotten too cold. I think I would have gotten hypothermic. Quite a lot of people dropped out. A lot of the a lot of the Ethiopians and the Kenyans dropped out because it was just too cold for them, I think.
Yeah. Also, like I kind of know you now, and it seems like you insist on wearing shorts and a t-shirt for racing, like no matter what the weather is, because I remember we
Yeah, well, you
did.
get too hot otherwise.
Yeah. So, like, even if you had access to Brooks apparel, you wouldn't have worn it. I mean, so part of Dez's success is just being prepared for the elements and wearing her jacket.
Could be, yeah.
Hmm.
You remember me running somewhere in shorts
Well,
when I shouldn't, or
Well, I mean, I don't know if you shouldn't, but like when we did the Toronto Marathon together in what year was that? Maybe 2019. No, it was probably the one before 2016, something like that. The first time we did it together, it was only 4 degrees in the morning, and I think it
yeah,
was maybe not even 4 degrees Celsius.
yeah.
I was wearing like a long sleeve with my club singlet over, and I was wearing 3/4 pants with like compression socks. So basically, my legs were all covered.
I think I had a
And
T-shirt.
you had, yes, you
Yeah.
had a t-shirt under your singlet. So I mean, at least you had a t-shirt, but like, I mean, it was cold. And you had shorts. I remember being happy that I wasn't wearing what you were wearing.
But that was okay. I
I
think,
guess so, because you don't really remember it,
yeah.
but
Don't remember feeling cold. It's all
yeah.
right. I probably had Brooks shorts on. That's probably what it was. I may well have done, actually. They are genuinely my favorite running shorts. Anyway, so fantastic achievement for putting Brooks on the map. Des Linden winning the 2018 Boston Marathon.
So Jim also personally didn't have an uneventful life. He talks about being diagnosed with cancer only 31 days after interviewing Gabe Grenwald in 2017. She's the elite track runner that was diagnosed with cancer and was like fighting cancer for about a decade before she died in 2019. And it wasn't the same cancer that Jim was diagnosed with. He was diagnosed with esophageal cancer, which apparently has a 5-year survival rate at 20%.
Wow, that's a pretty
That's, yeah.
tough odds.
And I mean, he's at the time of writing the book, he was past his 5 years. So he's part of that 20%.
Yeah, so I guess he's beaten the odds from that point of view. So, but not easy. It didn't sound like it was like an easy road. But well done.
Yeah, he had surgery and then he had some complications.
You got to
So he
chalk that
had
up to another
another.
victory, though.
Yep, definitely. So Brooks Ghost Shoes apparently won't be the only thing that's carbon neutral in their product lineup, because Brooks wants to have a whole carbon neutral product lineup by 2040. So basically, Brooks plans to be carbon neutral by 2040.
Okay, that's cool. I wonder if other companies have plans to be carbon neutral. I've never really heard this much. I know, countries talk about
Yeah, decreasing carbon emissions.
decreasing their carbon emissions to be within line with agreements by a certain time. And I guess all of this then kicks back to companies.
I think like I've been hearing about the
Do other
carbon
sports
neutral.
companies have carbon neutral targets?
That's the thing, is like most of the time when I hear things like that, it's like very small companies that kind of have that plan.
Yeah.
So I don't know if any bigger companies have the same plan, but apparently there's a whole side industry of offsetting your carbon footprint. And like
Yeah.
even like me and you, let's say we wanted to offset our carbon footprint of like, let's say our lifestyle, you could, contact one of these companies and they will tell you like they have different strategies, like you plant so many trees, or like you, I don't know, decrease the number of plane flights you take per year, and so
Okay.
they kind of like add it all together, and you try and
We were probably all
offset.
carbon neutral for a couple of years, but not so much
Mm,
now. It's going to be a challenge again
hmm.
as everything winds back up post COVID.
Yeah.
But that's cool. One of the things they did develop was kind of a plan to become a huge company when they were, I think it was back in 2010. They said, okay, we're going to have a 10-year plan. In 10 years' time, we're going to be a $1 billion company. And at the time, everybody said that's ridiculous.
Mhm.
That's completely ridiculous. But they just achieved that last year. So
Yeah.
not
So it
not
took 11 years.
plus or
I mean,
minus on target, yeah.
yeah, close enough.
But given the nature of the huge goal, and that's another aspect of successful companies as well. They declare really big, scary goals, and then they have the focus to try to achieve them and don't get distracted and focus on them.
I guess that's also how like very good runners end up like
Yeah,
doing pretty impressive things. They put out big scary goals and then they kind
yeah.
of just like chip away at it.
Is that us?
Hopefully.
It's our 3 hour marathon goal is certainly big and scary. There's no problem with that. It's having the focus to get after it. Then,
Yep.
having just come back from Portugal and a 5 day trail stage
Mm-hmm.
race,
And now
I'm a
training for
little
the
bit defocused from marathon running.
Yeah, but that's okay because you're completely focused on the next thing, which is the Quebec Mega Trail, which is another trail run.
Yeah.
So you're like already trained basically because you just went to Portugal and trained for the Quebec Mega Trail. See, I'm the one that's going to have the problem.
I'm laser focused a bit.
A bit.
What do you mean you're going to have a problem? You've been getting on the track and doing track type
Yep.
stuff, going
Yeah.
off training with these elite track runners.
Yeah, that's not going to help me though, climbing over the boulders and the
Oh no, but it's going to help you with marathon.
Oh, yes.
It's going to help
Yes.
you with marathon running.
Hopefully it'll help me with marathon running.
Yeah,
Yes.
don't worry
but-
about the trails. That's just a distraction to train our legs, to get our legs hardened. Yeah, so good stuff. I think you want to sort of summarize, just give her views, and I'll give mine.
Perfect. So I mean, I guess I'll start with saying that the book was a bit more business than running, but I loved learning about Brooks. I always loved their "Run Happy" slogan because it represents what running is to me and a lot of runners. It both makes me happy and is an expression of my happiness. When I'm sad, I run to make things better, and when I'm happy, I run because I'm happy. That's basically what I do.
Sometimes you're running, and sometimes you're sleeping.
Yeah. Yep. Jim talks about investors and choosing who your investors will be because many times they will have short-term visions and not support decisions that have a long-term horizon. I thought it was interesting because I always wondered why so many companies worked for such a short-term vision. And now I kind of understand. The company I worked for preferred to outsource work instead of investing to replace old machinery. This was not the current company I'm working for, but another company that I was just there doing like a stage as part of my schooling. And they didn't want to replace machinery unless the ROI, which is the return on investment, is less than 1 to 2 years. But the life of the machines was like 15 years or more. And at the time, I remember thinking like, that's so strange. But now I kind of understand better after reading this book. The book is a good read about overcoming obstacles and shows that sometimes when one door closes, then another one opens. Like Jim discovered running because he had to give up his dream of being a professional hockey player when he stopped growing at 5'10". I was disappointed that there was no mention of the super shoe market. Brooks actually invests heavily in R&D and has collected a lot of data about biomechanics, but their Brooks Hyperion Elite is only at their second iteration and not really talked about much when you see articles about competitors to the Nike Next Percent and Alphafly.
Yeah, it's a shame that that's not in there, and it would be nice to ask Jim about that because, just to inform our listeners, I mean, the book's very, very up to date. I mean, it's only just released, if not quite released yet in some places.
Yeah. The book talks about Brooks having performance running gear as their main goal. So I would have thought that they would try to compete in the plated shoes department as well. So and their running gear is very good as mentioned by Alan in his favorite shorts. So I guess in all, I would recommend the book for anyone that wants to learn more about Brooks and how they value company culture, or if you like business books. It was a good read, so like not much about running, but it was really a good read if you like business books and learning about how business works, company culture, and what's important. Then
Yeah, I guess the proof of that is generally when we read our books for these reviews, we read them simultaneously, and you always read it before I do, because you're a geek,
Yeah.
maybe, I don't know, because you're super motivated about running books, and
Hmm.
you read them,
Definitely.
you devour them, so you always read it before me. So I thought, haha, what we've got here is we've got a business book. It's more business orientated, and I'm the business guru, so no problem. No, you still read the book before I did.
Mm,
So it goes to show that, it is a bit interesting,
yep.
even as a business orientated book. From my point of view, I think something cool in the book that I've never seen in any other book is that Jim actually gives you at the start a music playlist to go with the book. So he actually gives you a list with some specific songs for each chapter, kind of
Hmm.
like a soundtrack for his career to some extent. It's the first time I've ever seen that in the book, and I thought that's pretty cool. I think if I write a book one day, I'm going to put some music into it.
Yeah, I thought that you'd like love that.
And also I liked his taste in music. He seems to have a big love of Bob Dylan. Goes for the less common, the less popular Bob Dylan ones that everybody would know. But he also has like Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and people like that who.
Oh, so just an aside, but like I found a Spotify playlist created by Brooks, I think.
Oh
I
really?
can yeah, I can
Then maybe that's Jim's list.
it might be Jim's list.
Jim,
You
when you
can
when you call us up to talk to us about plated shoes, please let us know if that's your playlist on Spotify. Are you going to give us are you going to give us the songs? Or are you looking it up there? Or
I'm trying to find the playlist.
okay, I'll keep going with my summary while you're looking for the playlist. Okay.
Yes, this might take a while.
What was nice in the book was to see the sort of warts and all reporting. For example, when Brooks invested in new warehouse and inventory systems and they crashed, they failed to give their customer service promise for a period of time. And I think, that Jim would report that honestly in his book. It just goes to speak to the trustworthiness of the company, that they tell it like it is. It is really a business book about a running company, but it's a fascinating one. There's lots of practical advice and direction of how to make businesses thrive, and they're all sort of woven into a story type form, so they're easy to read, which is what you've just said, Liz, I guess. One of the nice things is to see how much integrity Brooks bring in trying to serve the running community in the right manner. In today's sort of dog eat dog world, we hear too many horror stories about poisonous cultures within companies. You've just given one. We've given some examples. And I think on the balance of what we've read, I think Brooks is a company that you can trust. So if you're looking to invest your money with apparel or material or shoes with a running company that you can trust, I think you'd have to put Brooks in amongst a group of other companies.
So I found the Jim Weber running playlist on Spotify.
Ah,
Yes.
okay.
Do you have the list of songs? Maybe we can compare this. Okay, here. So he has Tangled Up in Blue by the Indigo Girls, Kashmir by Led Zeppelin,
Yeah,
Ramble On by Led Zeppelin,
those appear in the book.
Running Down a Dream by Tom Petty,
Yeah.
My Black Pages, Bob Dylan, It's the End of the World, REM.
Yeah, he has a few REM. I like
Okay.
REM.
It's All Right, Ma, Bob Dylan, Once in a Lifetime by
Talking
David
Heads.
Byrne, Say by John Mayer. I know that one. I like that one. Second Chances by Gregory Alan Isakov. Big Yellow Taxi by the Counting Crows.
What about Macklemore? Can't Hold Us. Yeah.
Can't Hold Us, Macklemore. Something Good This Way. Jacob Dylan. World Falls, Indigo Girls, Strange Fire by the Indigo Girls, and Polk Salad Annie by James Burton. That's the whole playlist.
I think most of those are listed in the book.
Okay, so that's called the Jim Weber Running playlist.
Okay.
Yeah.
For people who are into it, they can get on that. We can't ask Jim where we can find him and how do we follow him, but we can at least check out his playlist on Spotify.
Yes, he is on LinkedIn too. I did see him with his like a picture. Well, I guess it was Brooks is on LinkedIn. They had a picture of him with his new book. So thank you for listening to another episode of Running Book Reviews. A big thank you to the publisher HarperCollins for providing a review copy of the book. If you'd like to leave us feedback about how we can improve the podcast or want to suggest a book that you would like us to review in a future episode, please leave us a comment on social media. We are Running Book Reviews on Facebook and Instagram, and on Twitter, we are reviews_running. Please also follow us on social media to find out about new episodes when they are released, or, for some cool quotes from the books we read. Or you can just subscribe to the podcast on our favorite streaming platform.
Nice work on the cool quotes, by the way, Liz. You've been working hard on that.
I've been working hard.
Yeah. Also, before we leave, 2 things. What about buying us a coffee?
Oh, yes. We are on Buy Me a Coffee. You can find us by just searching Running Book Reviews.
On the Buy Me a Coffee site.
On the Buy Me a Coffee site.
We haven't had a coffee for a few days, so we don't want to get caffeine withdrawal, so get on that, guys. That was one thing. The other thing I was thinking, well, instead of the normal outro music, we should sing one of the songs from, we could play one of the songs from Jim's podcast list, except we would get
We'd get a copyright
infringement. So I thought what we could do is we could sing it.
Oh, I think that would still be a copyright infringement.
I don't think so. Nobody will be able to work out what song it is. Which one do you want to try for, Liz?
I don't know, because I don't know any of them.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I didn't listen to the playlist. I should have done my homework. Okay, next run. I'm running to work tomorrow morning. I'm going to listen to that
Okay,
playlist.
we'll work on that. We'll just use the normal music then. Okay.
I think that's probably safer.
Okay. Do you want to say bye?
Bye.
Bye.